The Hidiz MP145 is much loved in the community, but let's see if they still are competitive in Q3 2024. Starting with an unboxing, well, there's really isn't too much going on for it. It's a typical chifi box without much flair, featuring just a render of the MP145 themselves on the front. It also features the almighty high-res audio logo. Some say that the logo itself will make the earphones have a soundstage like that of Carnegie Hall. All I know is that it is just a logo. At the back, you get some specifications, and really, that's about it. Removing the sleeve, you'll find some wise words from Hidiz. Relish music, beauty in the details. Whoever wrote this, you got that right. Inside the box, you will see the MP145s themselves. Below that is a nice, easy to open case that contains the provided cable as well as some tuning nozzles. Stock on the earphones are the rose gold ones, which are balanced sounding. There is a red nozzle that provides a treble cut and a silver one that offers a treble boost. Hidiz also provides 3 different types of ear tips for you to further augment sound to your liking. They are surprisingly quite nice and certainly not e-waste. Build quality. There is no getting around it. The MP145 is simply huge. That's what she said. It literally looks like aluminum nuggets. Mine is a rather pretty anodized silver. The faceplate is interesting with a huge Y in the center that houses the vent. There are some nice details, including some steps on the chassis as well. I like how it looks, but if you use them quite frequently, you might notice that they tend to accumulate dirt. I had to clean mine up for this review. The chassis also has a 2-pin termination, which makes it super easy to swap cables. Inside the chassis is a 14.5mm planar driver for all that planar goodness. Oh yes, if you're wondering about comfort, the MP145 fits me just fine despite its larger shell. However, I want to point out that the nozzle is larger than normal. By larger, I mean it's huge. Also, that's what she said. So if you have smaller ears or canals, it might not fit you, and that is really a bummer. The cable on my unit is a silver-plated copper cable terminated to 4.4mm. There is an option for a 3.5mm one as well, but for me, it is more convenient to use 4.4 as most of my dongles and DAPs feature that. The quality of the cable is acceptable, and I like how the silver matches my chassis. However, it's a bit tangly. Sound. Sonically, the MP145 is a mild V-shaped IM that does not overextend on the upper mids, making it a rather relaxed listening experience. It has the sort of signature that you can listen for hours if it fits you. This review is based on the rose gold nozzle. It has the typical planar tonal color that offers great sub-bass but delivers it rather linearly, which is quite different from how a dynamic driver usually renders. What I like about the MP145 is how it manages to tame the upper mids and treble, similar to the LetShouer S12 2024, which I reviewed earlier this week. That is one aspect of using a planar driver and is plagued in earlier models, and I'm really glad that this has largely been solved. The MP145 is plenty cohesive, and I found that it does staging a little better than other planar models that I've tried. I highly suspect that this is due to the larger than normal vents that makes it a little bit more open sounding. Again, the MP145 loves power, so when listening to them, do put your best foot forward with a good dongle or even better a DAP to feed them the juice that they crave. It will be more dynamic sounding. Starting off with bass, I'm in the midst of a PLANARMEGEDDON, reviewing plenty of planar irons back to back. And what I have noticed is that planar bass tonality is rather similar across the board. The MP145 is no different, featuring an impactful sub-bass response that transitions linearly to the mid-bass. Mid-bass isn't as present as sub-bass, which helps with the mid-range, allowing it to sound a bit more spacious. Bass is quite transparent sounding as well. I found that the resolution in the MP145 to be great, as you get to hear quite a bit of texture in music, keeping things interesting. Transients is speedy but still allows for body in bass. There is great control here, and it does not bleed into other frequency bands. Bass is dynamic but not delivered in a more traditional dynamic driver way. It's more controlled rather than explosive like a dynamic driver. Next up, mid-range. What I like about the MP145 is that it delivers vocals very matter-of-factly. I don't find that it over-exaggerates male or female vocals and render them as they are. It delivers a very nuanced performance that allows the listener to hear micro details in the voices as well. There is also quite an airy aspect to the rendering of voices, which I enjoy. It delivers a natural warm tonal weight, which I found nicely balanced between natural and warm. As such, it isn't overly thick. I like how guitars are rendered here, especially with distortion, as I found that it maintained a classy presentation without distortion making them too unruly. Crunch here is tight and nicely rendered as well. Treble. The MP145 has an overall airy extension. I found that it extends very naturally without much strain, allowing for quite a sibilance-free experience, even with recordings that lean on the brighter side. Soundstage. When it comes to width and height, it is pretty good on the MP145. I'd say it sounds like a small console, which is largely very respectable for an IEM. Next up, depth and positioning. Again, a very good presentation. Bass here has good dynamics, which aids in depth. Positioning is also very decent due to the naturalness of treble rendering. So let's talk about some comparisons. So firstly, versus the LetShouer S12 2024 edition. I recently reviewed this, and like the MP145, it is also a single planar IEM. I think that the chifi world, the LetShouer S12 2024 edition is probably the pinnacle of chifi planar IEMs. I found it to be airier and more spacious than the MP145. It also has better build quality, the provided cable is nice and easier to handle, and it also has interchangeable plugs. It also solved the metallic upper mids which plagued earlier planar IEMs. The MP145 is no slouch either. It is very similar to the S12 2024, but I found it a tad bit less refined. Transients is a tad bit slower than the S12 2024, but looking at the price, it is also cheaper. Next up, versus SIMGOT SuperMix4. Now the SIMGOT SuperMix4 is similar to the Hidiz when it comes to price, but features a very different configuration. The SuperMix4 has one dynamic driver, one planar and one piezoelectric tweeter internally, and this creates a very different tonal color by comparison. Sonically, the SuperMix4 is also very different and daring. It delivers a smooth, dark signature, which is a rarity in 2024, and I applaud them for doing that. I found the MP145 to be a better all-rounder by comparison, as it is a balanced pair. It also has a tad bit better resolution in comparison as well. Next up, some likes and dislikes. I like what Hidiz did with the MP145, creating a more relaxed planar IEM that allows you to use it for longer. I think it is priced very well and great for folks who want a higher tier planar IEM rather than dealing with entry-level ones. It is pretty sophisticated sounding, and I think that it is one that will endure the test of time. Some things that I dislike about the MP145. I think it's quite obvious that the shells are huge, which can be problematic for some folks. Not only that, but the nozzles are also huge as well, and this can be an issue for people with smaller channels. And finally, ratings. Firstly, bass. The planar flavor is really rather nice here, and transients is also moderately fast. It gets a solid 7. Mid-range has good levels of micro details, and I really like vocal rendering, so it's a 7.5. Treble has really rather good extension and it's airy, so it's a 7. And the overall resolution, I would say it's a 7 out of 10 as well. Next up, talking about Soundstage, it is pretty stellar, a 7.5. And the most important thing is the enjoyment factor. I would say that the Hidiz MP145 is largely enjoyable, so it gets a solid A. And finally, in conclusion, yes, I am a bit late to the party with the MP145, but I think Hidiz did a great job with the MP145, and I can see why the community is in love with these. Once again, thank you so much for watching. If you have liked and subscribed, someone told me that you might meet the love of your life in the next 7 days. With that said, I hope to see you guys soon.